he was an OCS instructor, and I enjoyed him being in that job a lot because he brought everything from a BAR down to the house, and I learned how to field strip them. And I didn't take apart the submachine gun, and he wouldn't even let me touch the Thompson machine gun. And the other rifles, I could break it down with the best of it. I was about 10. I was an honor graduate of the Infantry Officer Basic Course. It was just so simple with the military education that I had. And back then they posted your grades on IBM cards. You get a card for everything. And one day my son was looking through them, and he said, "You didn't make anything less than 92. I said, "Well, maybe I lost one or two. I'm not sure." But I thought it was fun. It was like summer camp all over again because I wasn't trying to learn how to read a map. I wasn't trying to learn how to adjust artillery or mortars. I had done that. I was very comfortable with the biggest part of it. The first time my company commander asked me to put out a platoon-size ambush, I'd been in the company 3 days. And he said to me, and I had that deer in the headlight looks. And fortunately, one of mine became a really good friend. He's the closest of anyone I served with to my house. He lived in Oklahoma. And he saw from my startled look, he said, "Captain, why don't you let my platoon put out this ambush and I'll show him how we do it." And making the transition from the school solution to the real deal, it takes a long time for some people. It took a couple of days. I was geared up. My injury took such a period of time that there was something in enforcement paper almost every day. It took me 3.5 weeks to get out of the hospital, the MASH hospital, get well enough that I could be transferred to Japan. And everybody was anxious. Probably the one that's least anxious was me. And then I found out I was on about a 3-week cocktail party. They were using pure grain alcohol, medical alcohol, as a sedative. And so I was pretty laid back with everything. I didn't get too upset about it, which had its good features. But there was a lot in the paper. And she was ready to go. And then you had the congressman going to help her expedite her passport and all that stuff. But fortunately, my temperature finally got to below 100. 99.9 is fine, 100 is not. But when a third of your body was exposed to all the dirt and grime and that sort of thing, it takes a while to get on top of everything. But it was, I tell people, in many ways it was a good experience for me being there that long, because I was able to observe how other men handled it. And they kept expecting, the staff, hospital staff, kept expecting me to go through one of these emotional episodes where you finally really realized that what you were missing. Well, I knew as soon as the dust cleared, I was obviously aware of what wasn't there. So I didn't have those problems. In fact, I did just exactly the opposite. I finally figured out what they were doing. They were kind of huddling close, make sure that I got the support I needed when I went through that, because everybody goes through that. But I remember seeing my legs gone. I remember this cone and this laterite that I told you was so hard. Well, it maintains its shape, so it has a perfect cone. And I'm looking down and both my legs are gone at the knee. I mean, gone. No evidence anything like that. And then there's a little pool of my blood that start to pool at that time. And then I went through 3 emotions or strong feelings, and a resolution came out of each of those. Dr. Cooper Ross says 5. When you press for time, you can do it in 3. It doesn't stop psychologists from trying to help you through the moment. But my first thought was I was really angry at myself. I said, here you are, airborne ranger, the best job in the Army as a rifle company commander, and you, the old man at 24, you are the one that stepped on this mine. Well, we were traversing an area that time that didn't realize really how much at peril we were. This was Trang Bang, and it was part of the tunnel complex for Cu Chi. So they pop up and down. It was months later before they began to try and discover and see what all was contained in those. But my first reaction was, I'm gonna beat myself up. You've done this unbelievably stupid thing. It's all your fault. And then I was resolute. That's it. I got what I deserved. I should have done this, should have done that. And my second thought was, I just wanted to die. And man, I've got a new bride. We hadn't had our first anniversary. And I'm thinking, you don't want to go back and mess up her life. You've already done it, but you really messed up. And I thought about my family and how they would react, and it was just best if I died. So I would lay down, or laid back in that hole, and was content with that decision. I had all the time I needed to plumb the depth of just giving it up. And my third reaction or thought was, no, I want to live. And I want to live so badly that whatever it takes, I'll do it. I'm down for it. And I just let me get back in the fight one more time. Now, all 3 of those thoughts and the resolutions that came from each of them were all done before my medic touched me, and he was 10 yards away, my RTO and the medic. So it happened very quickly. The 5 things that had to happen in order for me to live that day, if one of them be any one that had been delayed, would have brought my demise. The Long Range Recon Platoon has the most experienced field medic in the battalion. This was his second tour. He spent 1 year in the bush, so he was a good medic. He was assigned to the Long Range Patrol, and rightfully so, because they're further out with less support and resources than any combatants. I mean, they moved around a lot, so they needed the best possible care. That's the second day out of the 9 months that I had been in, around, or crossed paths with the Long Range Recon Platoon. And that day we were scheduled to leave the field, so everybody was happy. They were up. We knocked down 10 clicks in about 45 minutes. They were ready to get on that chopper. And they were assigned the same pickup zone, Long Range Patrol. So I had the best medic in the battalion. Before he left that mission more than 2 weeks previously. The surgeon called him in and said, we're doing an additional beta test of this drug. It's got a lot of promise, but some have reported it's not effective for what they want. But he said it's designed to help your body go into shock. And I thought that was shock, completely out of it. But it was to help your capillaries all start to close themselves up. And David Martinez said he could actually see that. So in the beginning, I was spurting so much blood they couldn't tell anything. But as they've been working on me for a while and gave me this injection, they could rub the end of my stump and it would stay dry for 15, 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds before they wipe it again. So that's two of them. It was daylight. You find it real hard to work on someone with red lens flashlights. Really difficult. We were in contact, so all the attention could be devoted to myself, and both my RTOs, front and back, had injuries. One returned to duty in a couple of weeks, and one of them had to rehab in Japan. And my boss knew immediately that a medevac was needed. He's up there flying around with his artillery coordinator and all that sort of stuff. So it was fast on its way. So I started going to reunions 15 years after we came back. And these men would say, I saw where you were and I'm working on you. I said, but you never shut up. I said, I don't understand what you mean. He said, you told me your wife's a PT, her favorite patients are amputees. I said, well, that's me. That sounded like me. I can always go the second mile. And then another reunion, one of the guys said, well, I was there in the hole, or next to where the hole was, and it was crowded out by the medics, and you called for McLaughlin, who was the senior platoon leader. And he said, you turned the company over with a hand salute. And it sounded like, more than that tale needed. You could tell they were proud of how I had dealt with the injury. And the last thing that I want to convey about that day is that I was unafraid. If I died, that's okay. If I lived, that's okay. Now, I have a deep personal faith, and at the age of 13, I wanted to serve the Lord as best I could. Now, I sure took many adventures off the narrow path, I'll assure you that. But I was at peace, and these men didn't know why. You have to reinvent yourself. Now, you're the same guy. You're the same, have the same goals, aspirations, ideas. You still like the same movie stars and all that sort of stuff. But you can't be that guy again, because immediately you will try and get to be the old guy again. Instead of working on what you can do, you're worried about the loss and can you do this? What you want to do is be restored to the degree that's possible. And I just never went there. I never once said that if I'd just done this, or why, if I never did that. That's why the psychologists were so hot on my butt. I mean, I knew my state of injuries and I wanted to live and I knew what I was going to face, but I was ready to give it a shot. I didn't know much about triple amputees or how many there might be or what they could do, but whatever it was, I was going to try and do it better. And when you buy your first airplane, before you found out that the FAA might want to have some say about whether or not you fly it, it took a while, but we got her done. And people say, why was that so important? I said that people think that aviation is 90% motor skill and 10% up here. It's exactly the opposite. It's something you do with your brain. And the change that I went through, that's probably more of the reason you're sitting here and talking to me, is not what happened in Vietnam. I had a normal, typical experience. I love leading men in the field. The happiest time of my day is when you can tell the difference between a bush and the VC with an AK. And I knew that we made it through the night. No one got hurt. We weren't in a dust up with the other guys. And I got this boosted joy every morning when that was true. Unfortunately, it was the overwhelming majority of the time. They called back to the home away from home in Cu Chi and said, is there anybody here that knows him? We need to keep him distracted because we're not going to put him out. We may not be able to bring him back. So that same friend of mine from Oklahoma was he got a new job at S4 shop, and he came down there, and here he is with his little gown, hat, and all that routine, and they told him what they wanted to do, just engage in conversation, just distract him if he's tired, tell him buck up, anyway. And he said that was the hardest thing that he ever did in his life, because I could only take a little bit of it, and then I'm trying to find the wall. They hit me with a little ammonia and I'm back in the game. But it's little things like that that I find are, well, they're good memories in a bad situation. But in order to carry myself from that point to the person I became, I did have to change how people, their perception of me. But when I was in a group and they gave me these pitiful looks like my life could not be worse, I must be terribly unhappy, it infuriated me. That's not who I was. So in the beginning, it took a conscious effort and on my part to go over and meet that person. And talk about people's authority. I can meet anybody, and I may call them by the military rank or Mr. President, but that's about as far as it goes. Everybody else, first name basis to me. I know they're not going to send me back to Vietnam, but this change where I became aggressive about If somebody had to be intimidated, it wasn't going to be me. The majority of things I've done were accomplished only because she facilitated that in some way. From stuff like taking time away from the family when I was skiing, and spending resources on things like that. But she was an inseparable part of whatever I've done. And it only takes someone who has a spouse that has done that can truly appreciate the depth of the truth of that statement. They just think, oh, he's just being nice. No, that's not the case. But life has been fun. I've enjoyed it. The reason that street is named after me is because people cannot believe that someone like me could be so outgoing, positive, examples of anything but wasn't anything negative that they ever saw or heard. And that's it. And to me, that I was kind of embarrassed about the whole deal. But really and truly, that speaks to, I just did what I thought was right. Betty, no one likes to be around a mope, and I didn't mope at all.